Hey and welcome to Never Went with Aragon. So you may have noticed that Cryptic Studios announced that the Companions of the Hall are actually going to be there for another week. And the reason being is they made a good bit of a mess up. Initially, when they made their blog here, they had said that the Companions and bundle would disappear on the Thursday, 4th of August, not July the 28th. And this, you can see, was corrected in their blog sometime after this going live, after I made my video where I also said they would still be available until August the 4th. So very fortunately, Dead Mano went to the Cryptic developers in our content creator program Discord and asked the devs to hold to their initial word of allowing this Companions of the Hall bundle being available until August. So that is how it is. They announced on Twitter that again they will be available until August. And that's specifically due to their mess up. But of course, it's a benefit to them. It allows us to have a bit more time to consider whether we want to buy them or not. Now, in my previous video, I did go pretty in depth about which one you should be getting, all the benefits and bonuses that they do give you. Ultimately, yes, the Companions are really good in what they do, giving you stats, but again, you're only looking at a few percent here and there difference compared to what you would see from Companions just generally that you could get on the auction house or just dropping all over the place in events, Juma bags, etc. Overall, it's not really worth, in my opinion, to spend that coupon, at least for me, as I already have Drizzt and Wolfgar, so I have that combo, and getting Bruner and Regis can be very good for my tank, but overall I'd like to just save that coupon for potentially something more groundbreaking, something more unique that might come down the line. Anyway, very nice of them to actually go back, rectify their mistake, and actually allow people to still buy the Companions, those of us who were planning to, let's say, make the purchase just a little bit later in between up until August the 4th, and now at least we have that time. So now I'd like to go a bit more in depth with regards to the new gear that's upcoming with the reworked Dragonflight. You can see all the bunch of legendary rings there amongst some purple gear, shirt and pants and some other rings, and additionally the new artifact set that goes with it. Specifically, this artifact can deal a ton of damage. So I've made a document to showcase all of the gear nicely spread out in its unique sections. For example, right here we have all of the armor sets, and you can see the bonuses that it would provide, and you can see which pieces I would run with, let's say on a DPS or a healer. There's really nothing great here for a tank. Overall, the set bonus itself is pretty garbage. This could give 30% power or 30,000 power, and I would still call it a bad set, just because of the sheer amount of stats you're getting from using individual gear pieces here, like 7,500 there, another 7,500 on my arms, 15% on my armor, 10% on my head, and this total of 5,000 maximum hit points and 3,000 power. Wow. I understand if they just want this to be stepping stone gear, but realistically, you're not going to be bothering to farm Dragonflight for some of your guild members when you can just go and do a few random queues getting your Seals of the Wild and already getting better gear here. Look at the headpiece, 7.5% accuracy. That's already more offensive stats total than you're getting from using the entire set. So I digress, we move on to legendary rings, and here we have the moving rings. All the rings that only give you any benefit when you're moving. Albeit, of course, they do have their unique spread of stats. And again, I would recommend like this ring for DPS, this one for healers, this one for tanks, and you can see throughout the rest of them there. Personally, wouldn't run any of these, except perhaps on a tank when you're running the Ring of the Condemned. Most classes can't feasibly keep moving all the time. Potentially some healers, but DPS, even in AoE, you gotta stand still for a split second to cast those powers. All of these bonuses again are just pretty underwhelming compared to other things we have out there. It's only 5% stats unlike these ones here, and then you're only getting 3,000 rating points on 2 stats there. It's a total of 6,000, and ratings anyway you're going to struggle to fit when you're running an augment. Additional legendary rings, you can see here you have 2 of them that require you to stand still. These work exactly the same as our like Soulfire Ring of Piety. you only gain the benefit after standing still for 6 seconds. Sure, that can definitely be feasible in a boss fight, but after 6 seconds, this thing expires and won't refresh until another 6 seconds of standing still. Makes it only 50% up. And so you got to take that in consideration when you look at the stats. Like 10% defense, it's great. But if it's only up half the time, that's equivalent of only 5%. And the crit severity over here is only 5%. And control bonus 10%. But realistically, in a boss fight, control is useless. Then we have HP dependent rings. Personally, these are great. You're generally always full HP, or you're generally going to be dead pretty quick. We have a very similar one, the Soothsayer's Ring of Absolution, and they work great. That's 7% there, and that's what you would be going for, but alternatives are these ones. The stats, however, not looking so good on this one with crit severity. 3,600 control bonus, so I don't really recommend anybody using it. You can definitely use this one for DPS here with the accuracy. Then you have a bunch of damage bonus rings, which also are pretty underwhelming. Like 1.5% additional damage, 1.5% across all those, and then ranged. Why do they get extra bonus? 2% across the board. Same with Dragon Hunts. Why do ranged DPS get extra boost? I understand potentially there are some fights where it's impossible to stand so far away to be ranged. I understand healers will also struggle to heal somebody standing so far away. However, melee DPS are generally the ones who have to avoid taking the most damage because they're right next to the boss and have to avoid all of those area of effects. So, in my opinion, melee DPS should be rewarded a little bit more because of the risk they're taking by standing so close to the boss or so close to the enemies that they will take a lot of collateral damage when the boss just does AoE attacks. Anyway, that aside, you can see my recommendations across the board there. One ring here confusingly gives a ton of awareness, yet giving a damage bonus as its bonus there of Brute's Fury, and additionally one giving a ton of outgoing healing rating, and then just giving Sniper's Fury. A bit weird, they could totally have just given a healer bonus here and a tank bonus here, but it is what it is, and that's my recommendations there. We move to the epic rings, and overall they're just pretty terrible. You're just gaining either power or deflection, depending on the percentage of health you are missing. And again, it's only rating. You don't generally want to run around on like half HP, so you're realistically not gaining much benefit from this. Either, again, you're dead or you're full HP most of the time if you have at least a decent healer. Then we have the shirts. These aren't too bad options at all. Again, I would just run alternatives from the Dragonbone Veil, just giving like 5% combat advantage, or you have alternatives giving 5% outgoing healing, I believe. But they do reduce your control resistance, and if you can make use of the ratings, these can definitely be useful. Alternatives you could only get from Avernus. And again, just looking at the stats and which ones I would recommend, you can see that across there. The only real reason I recommend these for tanks is because they're the only ones with defensive stats on them, even though they have still some offensive stats. The pants are also pretty underwhelming. Sure, they can give recharge speed, but that's again dependent on your hit points. If you're on 0% hit points or like 1%, you will gain 5% recharge speed. If you're full HP, you gain nothing from these pants. Sure, there's not a lot of other better ones out there, but I still believe for a DPS, these ones with crit strike, same as a healer, these ones with crit strike are the way to go. Action point gain and otherwise full offensive stats on your trousers, which is great. For tank, they're not bad at all, and realistically there's not a lot of better options out there. And lastly, we have the artifact set. The artifact can deal a lot of damage, and these effects I believe are AoE. So that's 254,000 total damage. This is on my build though, so this scales with your character's stats, etc. So you could be dealing more or less damage with this artifact. I do want to get my hands on it and test it, but otherwise you might want to run the entire set on a tank. I wouldn't run it on a healer, and I wouldn't run it on DPS. But the artifact you might want to run then secondary on a tank and primary on a DPS, depending on how much damage it does. But only for AoE. For boss fights, still the most superior thing is going to be your debuff and buff artifacts. And that's it for the entire gear. My feedback on this is really change up these bonuses, or at least give the set of 2 and 3 much higher bonuses. It could give you 50,000 maximum hit points. It could give you 30,000 power, and it still wouldn't be as good as alternative options. The moving rings, they're fine, but I just feel you could, again, double the amount of ratings and stats, and still people would struggle to even use these. What class can maintain moving the entire time while consistently outputting damage or healing? Even on a healer, it can be struggle to move all the time. You still need to stand still to cast some powers. And on a tank, you also can't really move a whole lot when you're in a boss fight. DPS will hate you if they lose combat advantage. And so you should be rewarded for being able to at least adapt your playstyle to make something fit. Something that only gives 5% when there are way better options out there just to give you higher, reliable boost in stats just makes these feel pretty worthless. I would double the stats on these, no problems. And then potentially some classes might actually use them here or there. And for the other legendary rings, the standing still ones, again, you could double the stats on those and that would make them at least a bit more viable. The HP dependent rings are pretty good. You could definitely just leave them on 5%, but change up this control bonus to at least like accuracy or power there. That could be a lot more useful. Control bonus is just pretty terrible. The damage bonus rings, I would again double all the values on those, but I realize you don't really want to compete exactly with what you have from Dragon Hunts as the mythic rings. But even with that, these are only legendary rings, 1600, and from Dragon Hunts you're getting 1650. Otherwise, the epic rings, pure waste of space, just sell them for gold. The shirts, they can have their place, same with the pants for recharge speed. The artifact set, the set itself, pretty underwhelming, 3% forte, useful on a tank, not so great on a healer or a DPS. Again, it's just a filler set, and sure, why not? If you manage to get it from Dragonflight as a new player, you'll probably be pretty delighted. The artifact might very well have its place. I would give it the effect of the token of Chromatic Storm by increasing the damage enemies take on one of these hits, like the poison hit or the acid hit. Even though it would only last 6 seconds, it could still be useful, especially with the amount of damage it deals. And that's my entire document with this gear. Again, there'll be a link in the video description below where you can read through it yourself. And that's my feedback with regards to that gear. I feel majority of it is just far too underwhelming to be used. So again, I'd like to give a massive thanks to all of these channel members for the continued support. And if I presented this well, consider leaving the video a like. And if you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.